Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Today is another episode of Annie Off the Cuff. This is my unfiltered thoughts on things in training, business, life, etc. Today I am giving you my behind the scenes on how my training is going 6 months postpartum. So without further ado, let's dive in. If you're new here, I am Annie Miller. I am a strength and conditioning specialist as well as a business mentor, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again without having to figure it out for yourself. Now, as I said in the intro, today we're going a bit more personal, and I am just giving you the updates on my training at 6 months postpartum, how it's going, what I'm noticing, new experiences, so on and so forth. Just for some background, I had 2 C-sections 13 months apart in November of 2022 and December of 2023. So I never really got to recover from my first C-section, pregnancy, labor, all of that before getting pregnant at 3.5 months postpartum. I will put those other videos that I have regarding pregnancy in the description below. I have never been this far postpartum without also being pregnant. So at the time of recording this video, I am 6 months postpartum, almost to the date. So I started my own Built by Annie programming at about week 16 postpartum. Before that, I followed the SD Evolution, their training app for the postpartum mom. Before that, in my first pregnancy, I followed Mama Stay Fit's programming, and I will tag both of those people down in the description below. I just wanted to try something different, and I enjoyed Mama Stay Fit's training. I actually did their pre and postnatal as well as their birth prep course, but I wanted to try a different training app or program this time, and I follow Alessandra and really respect what they do over at SD Evolution, so I thought I would give that program a go. Another one that I considered following was Meg Squats Plus One program. I believe she has a postpartum program, a pre and postnatal program to follow. It was very similar. Both of them are geared towards weightlifting and just making sure that you are reconnecting your breath and your pelvic floor in preparation for those more big compound barbell movements, which again they are included towards the end of those postnatal programs. But both of my postnatal periods, about week 16, 12 to 16 is when I was like, okay, I'm ready to train again. I'm ready to get back into kind of my norm. And there is, at 6 weeks when you have your 6-week checkup and they're like, yep, you're good to go. Good to go for what exactly? So I can start back squatting 200 pounds again, or like I can lift my baby, because those are 2 different things. And does it depend on how much my baby weighs? If you know, you know. Those appointments and just postnatal care in America is rather disappointing. I digress. It is very important, if you are weight training, that you follow an appropriate program, a rehab program that basically rehabs you from growing and birthing a human into preparation for whatever lifting you are going to be doing. So for my case, that was my Built by Annie programming. I had considered some other programs, but I really just do enjoy my own programming. I am very biased and I enjoy it. So that is what I went with, was Built by Annie. And I am currently almost through phase 2 of Premium 1. Premium 1 is the program that I would suggest if someone has taken a break from training, if they are new to training, or they are coming back from an injury, they are coming back from being postnatal, and they're at that kind of 12 to 16 week mark, depending on the person. This is what I would suggest because it is a linear periodization. We start with really high capacity and building that base, and then we continue into building max strength throughout the course of a year. That is what I am doing because it makes sense for me. So as I said earlier, I've never been this postpartum and also not been pregnant. So really, like, every lift, every rep, every week, every month is me just kind of observing how my body is reacting to said training, both from a physically, how does it feel? How do my joints feel? How do my hips feel? How does my back feel? These are places that can be problematic for me even before having children, but certainly after having children. My body, like the actual shape, the form, the structure of my body has changed. If you have had children and or grown a human, did you find that your structure changed? Like, my hips are physically wider, my feet are bigger. I don't foresee those things going back. My rib cage is wider. I actually worked with my physical therapist to bring my rib cage back down, but even in bringing the front angle of my rib cage back closer to 90, it's still just wider. And I'm not sure that it will go down. So let me know in the comments below. If you are a mom and or you have grown a human, let me know what changes you found in your body, if they resettled. Like, does it just take 5 years? I don't know. I've never been there before. I've never gotten that far. So I would be interested to hear from you in the comments. So my goals as far as training go are to recomp physically. So they are more physique goals, but I'm gonna get there via performance goals. So I don't market physique changes. I don't market aesthetic changes. I really do train because I like to train. It is really a joyful experience for me. I like the way I feel. I like the way I do life better when I am able to train, and I enjoy lifting weights. I've tried other modalities of training and I just come back to it. Maybe it's because it's familiar, or maybe it's because I do really enjoy that style of training. It's kind of classic, a mix of classic strength training and hypertrophy training. That is how I'm going to recomp. Now, recomp is basically just me lowering my body fat percentage and increasing my muscle mass. That is what I mean when I say that. And because I am coming off of kind of a rehab and I'm deconditioned, I almost get to tap into those newbie gains again, and I will likely be able to build muscle and lose fat. I have only been tracking my macros for a week and a half now, and I'm gonna probably take 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks to find whether I am in maintenance or whether I'm in a slight deficit. And that will just come from me sticking to kind of a caloric range, as well as hitting certain protein parameters. That's my main focus anytime I track, is hitting my protein. And then my carbs and fat can fall wherever, right? I am not trying to step on stage. I am not trying to get competition lean. I am literally just trying to shed some body fat and increase my muscle mass. The shape of my body will come from my training, and then how much muscle we see is going to come from my diet, recovery, etc., and losing as much subcutaneous fat as is needed for that to happen. I do not really care how much I weigh. Whatever weight my body ends up at postpartum with me training. My training is a 4-day split, 2-day upper, 2-day lower. No added cardio at this point because I just don't have the capacity for it right now. So whatever weight my body settles at is the weight that my body's gonna settle at. And I'm good with that as long as I like the way it looks and I like the way I feel. So like I said, that can happen whether I choose to be at maintenance calories or I choose to enter a slight deficit, and we have yet to see for that piece. Now let's talk about my training, which is again built by Annie, Premium 1. I am almost wrapping up phase 2 and absolutely loving it. If you are on my email list for Annie's Weekly Wisdom, the fitness side of things, you already know this. You know what I've been doing, you know what I've been changing. So be sure to join my mailing list if you're not already on it. As I said, I'm doing a 4-day split. So Built by Annie Premium 1 is actually 5 days, but the fifth day is optional cardio and kind of just joint care, which is added at this point for me. It is not a necessity for my goals, so I am not doing that optional 5th day. I am just doing a 4-day split, 2 upper, 2 lower. We have a squat day, a deadlift day, an overhead press day, and a bench press day. So there is a compound movement, a big compound movement, bench, deadlift, squat, overhead press, and those are high capacity. So we're talking like 12 to 15 reps, very light load, but the burn is so real. The cardio is so real. And so that is the main lift. So that really gets me both my capacity and a bit of hypertrophy. And then the strength that I am working on is really in the accessory work. So the accessory work tends to be more around like 8 to 12 reps, sometimes even as low as 6. So that's where I'm really able to push. And I find, especially for me in the postpartum period, that's really nice because I simply do not have the strength that I had before. I would much rather not push really hard in heavy bench press or heavy deadlift or heavy squat. It just, mentally, I don't have the capacity for that right now. Physically, I might not have the capacity for that right now. So I do like doing those movements. I like touching those movements. I like working those patterns, but at a higher capacity, more hypertrophy endurance based. And I will build those back up over the course of a year. And then in my accessory work, as I said, that's where I can really push in some more don't want to say fully isolated movements, but more isolated movements, more dumbbell work, less axial loading, so less loading of the spine with heavy weight. That's not a bad thing. Again, in this season, it's just not appealing to me. It's not what I want to do. Some things that I have really been enjoying in my training is I didn't get to push this hard during my first pregnancy or after my first pregnancy or in my second pregnancy. So it's been like a solid 2 years, over 2 years. And I was actually working on some injuries before I got pregnant with my first child. And so I really have not got to push in training in almost 3 years. And so it just feels so freaking good to like really chase the burn, really chase that muscular failure. And I'm not training all the way to failure, but within a legit 1 to 2 reps of failure. I mean, my last 2 or 3 reps are freaking slow, which is how they should be if we are trying to maximize hypertrophy. It just feels amazing. It feels amazing to push hard. Bulgarian split squats feel the best that they've ever felt. If you followed me through my first postpartum period, step ups, Bulgarian split squats, any unilateral lower body work, getting used to those new hips and just what the pelvis takes on in pregnancy and in labor, because my first, I pushed at a 10 and then had to have a C-section. So I was kind of recovering from a C-section and a near vaginal birth, which do not recommend. So anywho, I have really been enjoying just feeling more familiar with my body and therefore being able to push it harder, which I pushed harder in my second pregnancy than my first pregnancy. I will put my video here that compares my fitness specifically in my first pregnancy versus my second pregnancy. I was able to push much harder in that second pregnancy, largely due to the fact that my body just felt familiar. Those changes had already happened and it didn't feel as foreign. So I'm also getting to experience that in my postpartum experience from my second baby. And that has been very enjoyable for me because it feels like it kind of brings back that autonomy, right? As moms, it's very common for people to lose parts of themselves. For me, training is a familiar piece of myself that I have had for 15 plus years. In addition to that, or another level of that, is kind of how hard I can push in training. So pushing hard brings back feelings of a familiar version of myself. And I am here for it. I'm excited to keep pushing. I'm currently doing pull-ups assisted. I'm just thinking of some movements that I've really enjoyed. I couldn't do a pull-up, even like not physically strong enough, couldn't do a pull-up between pregnancies, but also just being in that overhead position, my lat and my midsection, it really pulled on my C-section incision, and that was just not comfortable. So this time I did a lot more C-section scar mobilization, which is included in both of the postpartum fitness programs that I talked about. They include that C-section scar mobilization, and that has been monumental. I cannot tell you, I can hip thrust now. I wasn't able to hip thrust after my first C-section. It was so uncomfortable. So I've been able to hip thrust. I can do pull-ups. I am doing them with a band just so I can control them better. But I mean, they are very comfortable. They feel great. And I also saw a pelvic floor physical therapist this time, probably 6 to 8 times from 6 weeks on. And that is highly recommended. She gave me so many little things to focus on within my training. It has been so helpful, and that is what I add into kind of my movement prep. So on a day, or depending on how my body feels, I will just take some of the exercises that I learned in pelvic floor physical therapy and or in those postpartum programs and just implement them into the movement prep that is already there inside Built by Annie. That seems to be kind of a happy medium for me. So overall, I'm feeling really good. My lifts feel good. They're so enjoyable. It's so fun to push myself again. And physically, I am changing. So I am giving myself kind of a year just to see. I don't really know if I have an expectation of what I'm physically going to look like. I also don't actually have specific, like, I want to squat this much or I want to deadlift this much. I am much more in the process. So my goal is to just follow this programming consistently and hit 4 lifts per week and push myself really hard in those lifts and then track it. See where we end up in a year. So this is my 6-month postpartum update. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any specific questions about any of my postpartum experiences or specific to weightlifting, go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. I am happy to discuss this. It's a really fun topic for me. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.